Fred and Rose West were a husband and wife duo who became one of Britain's most notorious serial killer couples. They were responsible for a horrific spree of abuse and murder that spanned 2 decades. Their crimes resulted in the deaths of at least 10 individuals, including 2 of their own children. These acts shocked the nation and cemented their place in criminal history. They are considered among England's most infamous serial killer duos. Despite the depravity of their actions, they maintained an ordinary façade while hiding their terrible crimes. Give a like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Before their relationship began, Rose worked as a nanny to Fred's children from a previous marriage. Fred was initially married to Catherine Rena Costello, who would later become one of his victims. Fred and Rose met when Rose was just 15 years old and Fred was 27. Rose became a nanny to Fred's daughters from his first marriage. Their relationship soon turned romantic despite the significant age difference. Fred and Rose married in 1972, but their murder spree had already begun the previous year in 1971. Evidence suggests Fred may have committed crimes before meeting Rose, including the disappearance of his sister Anne McFall and his first wife, Rena Costello. However, after meeting Rose, Fred's crimes escalated significantly. The two became partners in a series of horrific acts. Their crimes were marked by a disturbing pattern of sexual abuse, torture, and murder. They primarily preyed on vulnerable young women. Victims were often lured with the promise of work, such as becoming a nanny. Once in their control, victims were subjected to unspeakable acts and disturbing abuse. The couple had a specific fixation on sex involving bondage and brutality. Their home at 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester became known as a house of horrors. They committed heinous crimes within the confines of their own home. Victims were often dismembered after being killed. Their bodies were then buried within the property, frequently in the garden or under the patio. The couple is known to have been involved in the murders of 8 women and girls between 1973 and 1979. These victims included Linda Goff, Carol Ann Cooper, Lucy Partington, Therese Siegenthaler, Shirley Hubbard, Juanita Mott, Shirley Ann Robinson, and Allison Shavers. The couple had 9 children together: daughters Charmaine, Heather, Anna Marie, May, Tara, Louise, Rosemary Jr., and Luciana, and sons Stephen and Barry. Tragically, their own children were also victims of their abuse. Records show their children ended up at the hospital 31 times between 1972 and 1992 due to injuries consistent with abuse. Disturbingly, none of these hospital visits resulted in a referral to social services. Ultimately, 2 of their children were killed by the couple. Charmaine, who was Fred's stepdaughter, and Rena Costello's daughter, was killed by Rose in 1971. Fred buried Charmaine's body beneath the kitchen window after his release from prison for an unrelated offense. Their daughter Heather was killed in 1987. Heather's murder was the final known murder committed by Fred and Rose. Heather had allegedly confided in friends about the abuse she was suffering, which angered her parents. Heather was killed and buried under the patio after seeking independence from the abusive household. The couple's crimes began to unravel in 1994. Their daughter Louise confided in a friend about the abuse she and her siblings had endured. The friend's mother made an anonymous report to the police based on Louise's account. Louise subsequently made a formal statement to the police. Investigators then interviewed Anna Marie, another daughter, who provided detailed accounts of the abuse within the home. Medical examinations confirmed the children's accounts of severe abuse. Early investigations into the family's history revealed several missing persons cases linked to Fred West, including Charmaine, Rena Costello, and Heather. Fred and Rose West were arrested in 1994. They were initially charged with numerous counts, including rape and child cruelty. Their underage children were immediately placed in protective care. During interviews, a social worker noted the children mentioning a chilling joke within the family about Heather being under the patio. A case nearly fell apart when Anna Marie and Louise initially declined to testify against their parents. The couple offered conflicting stories about Heather's disappearance, attempting to mislead investigators. However, Detective Constable Hazel Savage remained persistent in her search for Heather. A search warrant was secured for the West family home at 25 Cromwell Street. The warrant was executed, and the House of Horrors was uncovered as investigators began digging. Confronted with the search, Fred confessed to Heather's murder. Heather's remains were subsequently found buried under the patio, just as the children had chillingly joked. Once the full extent of their crimes was uncovered, Rose West was charged with 10 counts of murder. Fred West was charged with 12 counts of murder, including the murders of his first wife and his sister. However, Fred died by suicide in prison before his trial began, on January 1, 1995. He was 53 years old at the time of his death. Rose West was found guilty of all 10 counts of murder in November 1995. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. To this day, Rose continues to maintain her innocence regarding the murders. Her initial appeal against her conviction was denied. Rose brought her case to the Criminal Cases Review Commission in 2001 but later withdrew it. Rose is currently serving her sentence at HM Prison, Mew Hall. Reports indicate she spends her time listening to the Archer's radio drama, playing Monopoly, and teaching cross-stitching to other inmates. Rose was reportedly moved between prisons after an alleged plot to kill her was uncovered. The case of Fred and Rose West remains a chilling reminder of human depravity. It highlights the devastating impact of their crimes on their victims, their own children, and the wider community.